This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. Visit bitrefill.com for more information. Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guests today are Bronson and Vanessa from Slowverlanders.com. They're a full-time traveling family who started driving around the world in 2018, and they're exploring, they're volunteering. I think they're in, where are you guys at now?
Well, right now we're in the Pacific Northwest in Washington, and we're flying back down to Colombia on Wednesday.
Our vehicle's in the border of Colombia and Ecuador right now.
Sweet. So the car's in Ecuador, and I've seen on Twitter, you guys have been doing all the Americas, Guatemala, whatever. we'll get into it. But this is awesome because this is something that I have a huge personal interest in, something I want to pursue in the future. So the enthusiasm will probably come across in the episode because I'm basically gaining tips for my own future voyage. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess to kick things off, tell us a little bit about your story.
Like how we first got started.
Sure, yeah.
Well, I first got injured at work. I was a police officer, and I basically was forced into early retirement. And I told him, hey, I can't stay here anymore. My life is miserable here. Meet me on the road or come with me, but make a choice. But for my own sanity and my own health, I need to go. And
this was in the Pacific Northwest?
Actually, we started out in Lake Tahoe in Truckee. So the California side of Lake Tahoe.
Our previous life, we worked as fire and police. And for about 13 years in Lake Tahoe, we would, work and then go skiing and mountain biking, do all that fun stuff.
So you were a police officer in Lake Tahoe?
I was a fireman in Lake Tahoe, and then she was a police officer in Reno.
In Reno, okay. Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And so we did a lot of, fun stuff. And then we traveled a month every year into other countries. And then mainly throughout Europe and Asia. And then we'd spend a month traveling across the U.S. So we'd seen about 23 countries around Europe, a bunch in Asia. And then we probably did 40 something states before we got injured and decided to hit the road full time.
Yeah. We basically packed up our whole life and said, hey, let's rent out the house, which we had just built 2 years prior, and took our son out of school. And his teachers were like, this is the best education that you could ever give your son. Taking him out of school and traveling the world and showing him the cultures and letting him learn by immersion is going to be the most profound educational experience of his life.
And so how old is your son, may I ask?
He is 16 now. He started when he was 10.
So the funny thing is we actually started out being 8 years global. Our plan was to take him out of school at 10 and drive around the world for 8 years. So we took him out of school. We actually converted an ambulance first, like a big RV.
No way, you did that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, did a full build on the inside of this ambulance, so it's more durable because it has a metal box instead of a cheaply built box. Lifted, 4-wheel drive, all the above. And then we started out, actually wanted to give him a base, so we went to the East Coast and did a U.S. history tour all over the hot spots of the U.S. before we entered Mexico. And then went down to Mexico for about 6 months, slowly, down Baja for about a month and a half, and then explored all these different regions throughout Mexico.
Ambulance.
Yes.
In the ambulance, yeah.
Okay.
And so about 6 months in the ambulance, it kept breaking down a lot, even though it was low miles. And by the time we got down to Belize, we're like, this isn't going to work for us. It's a little too big. And we found out it's so cheap down there that we could just rent a car, or not rent a car, but have a smaller car and rent houses in between camping instead of just fully living out of a vehicle. So we drove that vehicle, we took 6 months down, and then it was 6 days back. to the U.S. on the highway.
Congolese.
Yeah. And then we took 2 months to sell that vehicle, buy a Land Cruiser, build it up, go back to and come back down, do 3 months different route through Mexico to explore kind of all of it. And then into Belize for a couple of months, and then Guatemala, COVID hit. So we were stuck in Guatemala for a year before we were able to get further south in the borders.
And you guys have basically driven all the way to Panama and
then shipped our vehicle across, over to Colombia and down to Ecuador. And so when we were doing this first, after this whole 8-year thing, we had after COVID, we got stuck in Nicaragua for 2 years. After we were able to, the border south of Guatemala opened, we were able to go through El Salvador and Honduras, and then Costa Rica was still shut. And we said, you know what, let's just rent a house for a year and just surf in Nicaragua and just let this thing pass because we don't know what's going to happen. And then after that year, we're like, you know what, we need another year because a lot of the borders in South America were still shut. So you couldn't, if you shipped your vehicle down, once you're down there, you have to do a temporary import, and you have to go outside the country and bring it back in to renew some of these vehicle permits. And people were getting stuck having to ship their vehicle back. So we said, you know what, let's just let all this COVID stuff just go by. And so we rented another year, house for another year in Nicaragua. And so we had 2 years full in Nicaragua. We got residency because we had no idea when they were going to lift the restrictions. And we got tired of open. We got tired of doing the visa renewals, every month.
Right.
So we got residency in Nicaragua.
Rentista pensionado with the retirement income.
Yeah.
Yep. And so while we were down there, we would always consult people online for overlanding who were doing the Pan American. And so we'd always meet these people who were just, trying to do the Pan American Highway in a year or 9 months. And we're like, we just keep seeing all these people pass. We're obviously not going to be doing this for 8 years. This is now a 20 or 30 year trip because we're only in Nicaragua and it's been
4.5 years,
4 years or something. So we're not doing the whole world in 8 years. So that's when we changed to Slowverlanders because we were basically the slowest overlanders we'd ever seen.
I like it. Yeah. It rings off the tongue, but it's kind of hard to read with the WV.
It is.
We tried to do the SLO Verlanders, but then that was taken.
Yeah.
And we couldn't contact the people that use it.
And this isn't a query thing. We're just having fun here. So we're just like, oh, whatever. We'll just do this.
Really cool. So many questions. So the vehicle, because I think it's good for people to be able to picture it. So you did the ambulance before. Did you paint it or something on the outside?
All we did was we blocked out the lights. We basically took the light covers off, where the bright lights would be, and then blanked them so that it didn't show that. But no, the paint was perfect. It had 60,000 miles on it. It was
the
a
red
fire
and white
department vehicle.
stripes.
Yeah, red and white.
It was
stripes.
Brand new vehicle.
Did you get pulled over? Sorry to interrupt. Did you
get one time driving back to get the 4-wheel drive conversion, I roll up into this parking lot of this place, and I see a car just smashed into a pole. And I'm like, what the hell? And I go outside there, and this lady's like, she's like, oh, you guys are here. And I'm like, no, I'm not an ambulance. I used to work in an ambulance, but I'm not in an ambulance. But what's going on? Tried to, saw that she'd smashed into a pole. Ends up, I don't know. She got rear-ended. Some guy actually was drunk, came into this parking lot while her vehicle was parked with her kids inside as she went to the restroom. And this car slammed into the back of her car, running into a pole, and it takes off. The parking lot was empty, but her. The guy just bailed. And so I went over, talked to the kids. They were fine. There was no injuries, but she was just a bit shaken up. But yeah, I guess that was the only time that we really got mistaken for a full ambulance.
To consider as an ambulance. Did the ambulance for a year and a bit?
Yes.
Yeah, just a year.
Go ahead.
At that point, the ambulance was too much. There was a lot of stress around having that ambulance and that engine. We did everything that we could to try to bulletproof that engine, but we were finding that we were breaking down every 3,000 miles, and we were just dumping money into it.
Weird.
And this guy was just so stressed out all the time. He couldn't enjoy the trip. And it was just not what we had hoped for.
And then as you take an American vehicle, further south you go with those high lines on an ambulance.
And the low-lying roofs.
And
no
bushes.
easements.
You hit everything. If you see anybody who's done the Pan American that's in an RV, you'll see that they have damage like in the top corners because American vehicles just aren't.
Trees on the highway and stuff?
From trees, from buildings, because the buildings they have, they don't have any easement. So they're built right up to the street and the roofs overhang. And when you're going down those narrow little streets and you're trying to avoid the parked cars and stuff, chances are you're probably going to hit somebody's house.
And the biggest problem we had with height is when we're driving on the highway, and the signs in Latin America, a lot of times the sign is after the turn.
Mm-hmm.
Like it says no box trucks after you've already turned.
Yeah, after
and
you
so
got
there
on
was
there.
a no box truck saying after I turned, and we ended up slamming into a bridge. Actually took out the top of our ladder and stuff from a bridge. And after all these experiences of just having a bigger vehicle, we're like, this is too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like we need something small and easier to get around.
This is a really
these
good
countries.
topic because I want this episode to be actually very tactical in terms of how to do this and one vehicle versus the other and so forth, the trade-offs.
Absolutely.
And so these are actually some of the things that interest me, because your new vehicle, for context, is basically a normal SUV. It's a Land Cruiser, which is like but like one of the newer ones that basically looks like the bigger version of the RAV4.
It's a 2003 Toyota Land Cruiser.
So it's not the
20-year-old
old boxy one. It's like the newer modern SUV
I wish
looking one.
I wish I had the old boxy one because they're simpler to repair and all that stuff. We're actually this vehicle. Each vehicle has its pluses and minuses. And this, with the other vehicle, it was the size. With this vehicle,
and the engine.
It's the complexity. Like has a lot of electronics in it. So if something really big goes down, it's a lot to repair.
Mm-hmm.
And then also we have a rooftop tent, which was great because when we were in Mexico and those places, that box of the ambulance was an oven. The rooftop tent you see a lot in Africa, South Africa, and Australia because of the heat, because you're up high and you have breezes. So it's easier in hot weather. But see, now as we get down further south, get down to Peru, go to Bolivia, the heights of Bolivia, and go down to Chile and Argentina, it's just getting colder. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, crap, I wish I had the box again. There's no perfect solution, but our next vehicle will actually be probably better all around for what we plan on doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people think they need to have a Sprinter and they need to have like a bathroom on board and a shower on board.
You never use the bathrooms. Yeah.
We have never needed to find a bathroom. There's bathrooms pretty much everywhere. And if you're used to camping, you just go in the woods, dig a hole
when you're camping,
and bring your toilet paper with you. You're fine.
Whatever you gotta do.
But there are plenty of people that don't want to live that rugged. They want some of those certain luxuries. We're just not those people.
Really, to travel the world, you can you have a scale. You have people who walk. Literally, we see 20-year-old women who will throw a backpack on their backs and hitchhike from Alaska to Patagonia, and they'll take public transit, whatever. And we've done that. We've done a lot of that beforehand. But you have that. Then you have these crazy, Unimogs, $1 million motorhome, off-road motorhomes. Mm-hmm. But see, those people, then they have all the luxury of this house on wheels. But then they can't get down any streets. They have to carry a motorcycle or something to go into the town because you're not fitting that thing down any city road.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on what you want to do. Some people use motorcycles, and that's where we figured out, with our car, we can downsize a bit because if people can do it on motorcycles, we can do it in a car.
Yeah. And we don't carry a lot of stuff. So each one of us has a small little a 45-liter bag, and whatever doesn't fit in there doesn't go with us. So
the rest of it's just camping stuff and food. But literally we have these nice Patagonia carry-ons, and we can at any time we can park our vehicle and just go, okay, cool, let's go to Japan right now, and just go to Japan for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're completely versatile in that way.
Yeah. It's really nice to just be able to grab your bag, throw it over your shoulder, walk out the door, know that all your stuff is secure, and be free to do whatever you want to do for the next however long you're going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I want to keep this discussion going of like the trade-offs of like the different sizes and how the setups of like the tent on the roof versus like sleeping in the car type of thing.
Yeah.
I think the best is usually for us anyway is the interior with a pop-up, because like a truck camper, right? Like a pop-up truck camper. They have those. That's the easiest, I think, to get from the United States down would be like a Tacoma with a 4-wheel camper or something like that, where you have a pop-up camper. So you're still compact, but you have a whole living area inside, and also you still have the airflow. With the pop-up camper, they have the side windows, so that you have the airflow as well.
What is that? That's like the shell that you put on the back of a pickup?
Yeah, so it's like a camper shell you put in the back, but instead of being completely hard-sided and everything, the top pops up so that you have standing room. Mm-hmm. So it's compact when you're driving, and then it pops up when you're not. And then for us, for our next vehicle, we're actually going to buy a vehicle outside the U.S. because the problem with U.S. vehicles is the U.S. market, well, basically U.S., Canada, Mexico, North American agreements, they have one type of vehicle, essentially. They have the full-size trucks and all that. Whereas the rest of the world, they have a lot smaller vehicles, and they're also diesel, different fuel, different parts. And the main thing is getting parts. And our next vehicle will be one that's more sold around the world, globally instead. Like a Hilux type, but we're going to get a Land Cruiser 70 series, like a troop carrier. So you have an internal living space with a pop roof that's all in one with the cab. Mm-hmm. But it's also diesel, has lockers, and has all the 4-wheel drive capability that you need.
So the good thing about having a vehicle that's completely self-contained is when the weather turns crappy, you can live inside of it.
You just pop the top and you're
right
done.
Now, what we do, we can't live inside of our vehicle because we do solely outside living. So when the weather,
it's like, it's like you gotta like, you know what I mean? You gotta put it up and then you're exposed to the elements for a little bit if it's raining to get into it. And then like at least you get attacked by bugs for like 10 seconds while you're scaling the ladder.
Yeah, and cooking as well, because our kitchen is an outdoor kitchen. So our vehicle has to be open and we have to have access to our drawers and all of that. And then if it's raining, we're out in the rain trying to cook.
But at the same time, most countries, when you go to these places and you're going to roll into a campsite maybe, they'll have like a gathering area where you have a full kitchen and everything. So most of the time, we'll use those in between. Only when we go like more deep remote, like sometimes we'll go off grid, for weeks at a time. And that's when you pack everything up and like grow and just, you're camping full time. But in between, there's
always places that we find that have some sort of shelter. And a lot of times, if you meet people along the way, they'll kind of show you where to go. They'll let you camp in their front yard. They'll share their house with you. They'll share their food, their showers, whatever. So that's been our experience. We've met so many people that just open up their homes and invite us in.
That's one of the benefits. Whereas if you're really, really self-contained, like we see it in the U.S., you'll have a Class A motorhome roll up. They'll go into a campground. You will never see them get out of the vehicle. They'll just stay in the rig and watch TV. Whereas if you're our vehicle, we're forced to go outside, so we're forced to meet people and like interact with more people, and it ends up being better for us in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had some really incredible experiences because we had to be out there and we had to talk to people because we got lost. We needed to find car parts. That's another thing, is the availability of the parts that you need if something breaks down, and how do you get it? If it's an American vehicle, how do you get those parts to Colombia? How do you get those parts to Nicaragua?
And also with our rig, the way it's built, kind of separate. If you go into let's say Nicaragua, we got stuck there, I can bring our power source inside. I can bring our electric cooler inside. All of our stuff is, you're able to bring inside and actually use in the house because the power goes out. You're in Nicaragua, the power goes out for like 2 days. Oh, cool! I got my solar charger. I got my hot water heater. I got all this stuff that's portable. I can bring in the house.
Yeah.
And what's the type of car that you want to get? I want to Google this.
Okay, so it's look up Tom's World Cruisers.
Tom's World Cruisers. Who's Tom?
He's
a guy out in Germany.
Building vehicles.
Building the troop carriers like we want them.
Troop carriers. Okay. So it's like a Toyota SUV thing, and then they
And those vehicles are built. Like they have the simple diesel engines. They have the same siding as like a 1980s Chevy. They're super thick. They're 1-ton mid-size vehicles.
Yeah.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad with daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner. It's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information. See, I was looking at the combination of doing like a Hilux or, some sort of pickup, and then you buy the, overlander attachment thing for the whatever it's called, the camper. Those things are expensive.
They're super expensive.
They're like 20 grand for the thing.
Yeah.
Well, you have to get, and the thing is, when the economy drops back down, you'll find they're going to start blowing them out because they produced a lot of those things during COVID because everybody's, we got to get outside. And so they had to actually ramp up production. So soon you should start seeing more on sale. I'm keeping my eye on that too, because one of the good things about that setup is you take that camper, you put in your Hilux, and instead of springing it full time, you put airbags to accommodate the weight. So as you're going down there, if you do end up going like we do, we go, you know what? I like this area. There's a lot to see. Like you're in a ski area and there's like so many things to see. Rent a house for 3 months. Take the camper off, and now your truck is a truck. You're just driving it around and seeing the sights around that region until you've seen it all. Put your camper back on and keep going.
Whereas you're saying with like this World Cruiser thing, it's a little less practical to
take. Well, it's all built in. It's just going to be a heavier vehicle.
Yeah,
but it's not. It's still small enough to where we can use it as a regular car. But the thing is that's going to be more for when we circle Africa.
Well, another thing that people don't really think about and they don't really talk about is shipping your vehicle. Because if you're going to do a trip like this and you're planning on getting out to Colombia from North America, Central America, you have to ship your vehicle. And it's safer to be able to put it in a container. It's secured that way. Once that container is closed, it doesn't get open until everybody that's assigned to that container shows up at the dock.
Right.
And you save because you're paying for one container.
What's the alternative?
The roll on, roll off.
Yeah, so you roll on, roll off, and what happens is a lot of people get their stuff stolen because if they have access, it's just known your things are going to get stolen.
Yeah, it's on the top of the boat.
Yeah.
And it's just sitting there uncontained, and it's open to the elements, and it's available to everybody on that ship.
People use a Unimog, and you're looking at a commercial vehicle. It's like a semi, So they roll it on and they just park it, But people have access to that, and they'll steal your stuff. And the thing is, when you have like our vehicle, we went from Panama to Colombia. We put a truck in, our vehicle in, 2 motorcycles, strapped everything down, and we shared the price of the container. So to ship our vehicle across that channel, it was like 4 people sharing the price.
Yeah.
Got it. Because a Land Cruiser fits with ample extra space.
And we'll end up when we circle South America, we got another like 3 years of South America before we do anything. So we're going to be going and go to Antarctica, whatever, come back through Brazil, back up through Venezuela, and ship our vehicle from Venezuela back to the States to sell, so we can buy our other vehicle in Germany. So we'll be shipping it again later.
Yeah, and the thing with shipping is when you get like one of those big Mercedes Sprinters or a really, tall vehicles, they don't fit in the shipping containers. And then we have seen so many people have to like take out their grommets, drop their suspension,
Take off their
lower
solar
their
panels.
tires, take off their solar panels, remove their fans, all of these things because they just don't have enough room. And then they end up having to ship it on the RoRo, the roll on, roll off, because no matter what they do, they just can't get it to fit. So that's another thing to think about. Although the roll on, roll off is cheaper, it's a much cheaper way to go. It's probably about 2/3 the cost of shipping your vehicle in a container. It's not secure. So you run the risk of losing everything that you have inside. So
one of the places that you would, if you ever go back to Panama City, do you ever go there?
Yeah.
One of the cool places, look up Overland Embassy.
I've been there in person.
Yeah.
So, you go there and you just sit there for a while and you just watch families come, single motorcyclists. Here comes a big truck. Here comes another VW. It's really cool to watch all the families and people on a daily basis going across that shipping way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to visit it. I just literally Ubered there just to go check it out. Met with the guy, saw the office, saw them, working on stuff. And
nice.
the guy told me he'd do a podcast. I just haven't been aggressive on the follow up. But
you should. He's such a nice guy.
Nice. We love him, Alejandro,
who did
he's great.
He did the Pan Am himself, or at least the northern part of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he did it. He did it in an old school Land Cruiser, I think.
Yeah, that's one that I want.
Yeah.
They're easy to find in Panama. I don't know what it is, but
they are. Well, Nicaragua, we could have bought a brand new one for $31,000 when we got into Nicaragua. Brand new Troopy, fresh out of Toyota.
But Alejandro also, he sources those vehicles for people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and he buys and sells them for them.
He flips them and stuff, right?
Yeah,
because there's a mining operation.
They are worth lots of money in the States.
And there's a mining operation close by, so they'll time out their vehicles early, and so they'll just strip them down, rebuild them, and send them up to whoever needs it.
Yeah.
Did you guys use Overland Embassy then?
Yeah.
We shipped our vehicle with Overland Embassy.
And I remember the price isn't too bad because I remember kind of someone was independently looking at things, said it was maybe like $4,500 to ship it, something like that. And then I went to Overland. It was like less than $3,000, I think.
Yeah.
What was ours?
I think ours was $1,300. Because it was split between 4 people.
Yeah.
Each one of us was assigned like a numerical value for how much space our vehicle took up in the container.
So
the truck, exactly. So the truck and our vehicle were made up like 80%, and then the motorcycles took up 20.
Right. So the motorcycle only paid like $200.
Right.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, and they do their best to try to accommodate people and find shipping container buddies. That way they can cut down on the cost, because for them, it doesn't matter how many vehicles they get in there. Their cost is always the same. They don't charge any more or any less for however many vehicles. They charge per container. So the more people, the more, motorbikes or whatever you can fit in there, the less your cost is going to be.
And then when it comes to we use ferries all the time too when we're on the road, because you'll have to take it, like in Costa Rica, they got that big ferry. We use ferries. We use a lot of places where we have to pull up onto a river boat, and the boat will take us across, and then we'll go off to the other side. It saves us like 2 hours of going around somewhere else.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this in the Pacific Northwest, actually, like in Washington
right where
State
we are.
and in British Columbia and stuff. Yeah.
We use the ferry system here all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
But at the same time, when we are out and about and we're traveling through these remote regions, a lot of times we'll come through all these river crossings.
Yeah.
And some of them don't look like they go anywhere. So you're driving literally up or down the river trying to find the connecting roadway.
So usually you walk those. Like we've had in Costa Rica, one day we had 11 river crossings.
And some of them
one of them we had to drive down
deep.
the river for a considerable time. We walked in, we're like, where does this road go? And we walked it. We take off our shoes. We walk down through the river in the center of the river. It's not too deep. And then you're over there.
It's way over there.
And so we would drive down the river and then
pop
You're
out
driving
on the
into the water.
Yes.
Yeah, and then in the water down the river, and then pop back on to where you need to go. That happens
I
a lot.
I follow an Instagram page that's like 4x4 overlanders, and they're all in
Uh-huh.
Honduras and Panama and stuff.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's like basically exactly your vehicle or these like Toyota trucks, and they're like doing these insane river crossings with like
Mm-hmm.
bananas on the back, and
Yeah.
it's like so insane. Like the water's up to the windshield.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then same with the ambulance. That's why they use that Land Cruiser I told you about, the one that the 70 series. There are ambulances in Nicaragua and all these countries are made of those. So you can go into the rural regions and do river crossings and stuff because they have that elevated intake from the factory.
Yeah.
And you have that on your Toyota, like the
Mm-hmm.
upper, what's it called?
They call it snorkel, but it's a
Snorkel.
raised air intake. It's not, and it's also not just for water. It's actually to keep dust out of your engine, out of your filters. So
I've always been curious about like, since it is over the bed of the vehicle, like doesn't the water seep in and like get all your like seats wet and all that?
well, in our vehicle, it's pretty sealed. We've had
Yeah.
water up,
To like the
way past
almost
midway
the
in our
window.
doors, and the seals in that Toyota kept it in. I was
Seriously?
surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it totally kept it in. And you also when you do a water crossing too, you try and do it. I mean, you hit a certain speed you're supposed to go, and you create like a bow wave. And so the water, you're actually pushing water in front of you, and it's kind of going around and kind of
Creating a little bit of displacement.
less deep on the sides there for some, when you do that. So
yeah, we've done river crossings where when I get out, it's like up a little to past my waist. And so we're just kind of like driving through, and I'm looking for boulders,
for big rocks,
trying to navigate him through the water because you don't know what's underneath there.
Yeah.
You got to walk it. You got to see what you're running into because you don't want to crash in the water and be dead in the water.
That's the trick. You always walk it first.
Yes.
Always.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't enter water without walking it because otherwise you're gonna you hit the wrong boulder and you get stuck in that river. You get rain, you get river swell, you're done.
You're done.
And so that's been a big issue. And then one of the other things we deal with is the roads there are steep. Like we first thing you have to do to leave this country is our vehicles are made for these highways. Down there you don't go over 50, 55. So we re-geared our vehicle lower because we find hills that are so steep that you won't find them anywhere else in the United States. Like it's like some are 45 degrees, like a legit 45 degrees to somebody's house.
Yeah.
And so you have to have load. You have to
scary.
like your Sprinter's not making that hill.
Yeah. Let's get to the hills in a sec. I do have some thoughts on that, but the river crossing, this is something that Americans and Canadians just have no concept of like driving your vehicle through a river. I'm sure the first time you did it, it was a little bit hair raising, and now you're pros.
Yeah, it's
I don't know. Hair raising for us is really exciting. So
yeah, it is hair raising, but like that and like our last drive, we had to leave Colombia into Ecuador to go across Ecuador to go back to Colombia because there's all these like landslides. Right? There's these landslides that took out this road for days. So we're like, well, we either go 9 hours around or we take 4 hours and go through Ecuador in and out. So we did that, and ends up this road had endless waterfalls and also endless stream crossings because they didn't or their bridges washed out, and they're like, let's just kind of cut the road for now, and then they'll just drive through the water. It's fine. And we got to this one spot where we're like, the first time I've had like pucker factor, really, like looking at a waterfall, we all of a sudden turn this corner and this massive ravine. We're going to this massive ravine where normally you go across the back of the ravine, and there was a landslide. So somebody had taken a loader and just kind of cut the landslide, this massive landslide. So now it's this long river crossing, like.
And it's at the
waterfall
base of the
left,
waterfall. So the
cliffs
water
on the right,
falling, and it's got some power behind it, and you're watching as that water rushes across the road, and you're like, this is pretty sketchy.
But they did it, so somebody else did it.
Yeah,
we saw them come this way.
That trucker just
Let's
passed
go.
us, so I know it can be done.
We don't have the fuel to go back the other way, so let's do it. Mm-hmm. We have a winch. We can, if something happens, we can tie off. But
yeah,
but that's just dry. That's just us trying to get to a different town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this were like, I was with you up until river crossings and all this stuff, you know?
But to keep in mind, we search out the most remote places. We do. Most Colombians, all the Colombians we met that are our friends that are Colombian, they're like, man, you guys have gone to all these. I didn't know those places even existed.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are like 3 or 4 hours down a dirt road. These different villages.
Let's talk about strategies for the hills, actually, because I bet you have some good nuggets. It's interesting. I met a guy, an overlander guy, here where I am in Mexico just this last week, and they have a big Sprinter, a Mercedes Sprinter, and I told the guy, I was like, hey, I actually have a free parking spot where I live. You don't have to park on the street. You can park in my parking spot. And he was like, well, we just refueled our water, and now I can't go on a 45-degree hill because our water will like tip.
Water tank will
Yeah.
tip.
The water
too
tank will
heavy.
tip. And I was like, I kind of don't know what you're saying, but all right, that's fine. Like, he's like, yeah, so I'm just going to park on the street. I'm like, all right, no worries. Just trying to help you. But yeah, because where I
Yeah.
live it is quite steep.
Yes.
So tell me about some of the challenges of like the hills and whatever this guy was saying.
Well, what that for him it's different because he has a fixed big tank. If you can picture a long tank and then it tilted up like that, and if your output's over here, it's going to flood whatever sink or whatever you got going on. For us, we carry water in jerry cans because we can just go and get water easily anywhere. But with the hills, the big thing is, I'd say like it's just getting up them. Like
It's
there's
weight.
switchbacks. It's
It's
weight.
weight.
Because when we're traveling full time, we have a lot of weight. And that's why the sprinters, if you have a sprinter and you have all this weight and you're trying to get up a hill, it's like 45 degrees, it's not going to make it. You know,
You're
What's a
just you're
switchback?
underpowered,
switchback is when you go in one way,
like an S curve.
you go up, you see up the side of a mountain, it goes like this. It's like a Z pattern up the side of a mountain. They have paved roads like that down Latin America.
High, lots of like hairpin turns.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So trying to maneuver around those,
And you
going
think
up
about
a hill.
if it's steep enough, you're trying to take that turn and you're off balance a lot of times. Something if it's very tall, top heavy, has issues and those kind of things.
Yeah.
But
I can see where the sprinters or the really tall vehicles would have more problems trying to get up those hills. Most of the weight is always carried in the back, and as it's creating more drag for you to try to get up and down these hills. So it's pushing you down the hill and it's pulling you backwards up the hill. So you're trying to counterbalance all of that. And the problem with that is as you're taller, your center of gravity gets shifted as well. So when you have, 50 gallons of water at 8 pounds per gallon, you're carrying a significant amount of weight that you weren't carrying before you refueled.
well, and another thing with hills, like we were in Guatemala, and we're carrying a lot of weight, and we didn't re-gear yet, and we were going up this hill. It was a highway, as they called it, but I drove in low gear, in 4 low, for an hour and a half down a highway because it was just going straight up the mountain.
Steep. It was so steep.
It was like we're going from like 2,000 to like 11,000 feet.
What does re-gear mean?
Re-gear. So like in your vehicle, think about a bicycle. When you have your bicycle, you have your gear. When you're climbing a hill, you put in a low gear.
Yeah.
And when you're on like an open road to maintain speed, you have a higher gear, right? You can change those gears to give your mechanical advantage, however
And this
you
is
want.
on
So
a manual transmission vehicle?
it's on like in a 4-wheel drive vehicle, like your truck. You have a transfer case. When you put it in 4-wheel drive, you can put it in 4 low to get it, and it gives you like a 4-to-1 gear ratio extra for climbing. So that's why trucks work a lot better for this kind of a thing, is because you have that
You're
low
talking
gear.
to a guy that I've never owned a car.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So some of these, if you take a car, that's like say front wheel drive and it's made to be on a highway in the United States, and you try and put it up the side of a mountain, it doesn't have the power. You'd have to get a mechanical advantage in a lower gear to allow that engine for you to climb up.
And so
that
you
hill.
think on a lot of the newer cars, you can just like press a button on the screen and it'll like
Yes.
re-gear it?
No. It's only in in the re-gear aspect. What we did is we actually changed our gearing in our differentials in our actually gearing of our vehicle to
instead of
give
having
you more mechanical
instead of
advantage.
having the
Something you do at a mechanic
manufacturers.
shop.
Yes.
You have to replace your gears.
You have to replace
in your
all of the
axles.
gears inside your axles to give you that mechanical advantage based on what you do. Here in America, we have 60, 80 mile an hour roads. That's what we're traveling at all day long, every day. Yeah, so they're geared higher. So it doesn't have to work as hard. But you take that vehicle out of the United States and you try loading it with 6,000 pounds of gear and go up a hill, those gears aren't going to work anymore.
So what's the suggestion? Would you like do this, the re-gearing, kind of like as soon as you get into Latin America, or is this something?
It depends. It all depends on what you want to do, because not everybody goes the regions that we go. Right. We try and get the most remote villages and stuff. We've even hopped on public transit on like their Russian Jeeps with a bunch of other locals to go up the side of a hill to places
taking
where,
up a 45-minute
they didn't
Jeep
allow our
ride
vehicle.
And then walked 45 more minutes.
What I would do if I were to go to do what we're doing now, I would probably get, like I said, a Tacoma with a camper, a smaller truck with a camper, Pablo camper, and then, get airbags for the weight. And that's probably the minimum. But some people, if they're just driving from Alaska to Argentina and they're just going to cities, you can take a Prius. Yeah. There's a highway that goes all the way down.
Pack some backpacking gear in your car and just drive.
For us, we don't just drive the Pan American Highway. As we enter a country, we want to see everything that's in that country and then move on, which is different than what most people do. It just depends on what you're trying to do.
Airbags twice. I actually don't know what that is either.
Okay, so an airbag is basically industrial balloons that will go between your axle and your frame, and so they add as a second spring. So when they're empty, they're not being used. But when you fill them up like an air shock on a bike, and it gives you the extra spring weight. So when you have
suspension, basically.
Yeah, in your suspension, because if you have you put a camper on the back of a truck, it's going to sink the back of the truck down, right? Because it's all this weight in the bed of the truck, because it's going to compress the springs. You inflate the airbags to bring that back up to where you want it and to stabilize it, and then you're good. The other option is what we did is we just put all new springs in our vehicle because we had nothing to take off. We loaded our vehicle with drawers, with a rooftop tent, all this weight. So we had to put new springs to accommodate the weight that was going to be in there.
Hey guys, quick interruption to tell you about Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the best way to convert your crypto into gift card balances. These are gift cards that you can spend at hotels.com, Airbnb, Nike, and many more. You may remember Joel Valenzuela, previous podcast guest. He's been living on crypto exclusively since 2015, and he's a big consumer of Bitrefill. And so I asked Joel, I said, what do you like most about Bitrefill? He said that he likes the instant delivery, the precise amounts so that you don't have to juggle a lot of gift cards, and he loves the global selection. Nobody else has this much selection of gift cards, over 10,000 gift card options across hundreds of countries. Go to bitrefill.com to sign up, and you can also use the code MyLatinLife for 10% back off your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information.
Okay, cool. Hopefully this isn't too boring for people, like all this kind of like mechanical talk, but at the same time, it's like hard to get this stuff. You're like,
I know.
You're like my, I don't know, knowledgeable uncle right now. You know what I mean? So
you'd be surprised at how often we get asked all these same questions.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that are curious about the same exact things that you are.
There's a lot of logistics to it, and we've had to learn every single country we enter, we're learning new things.
Yeah.
Speaking of, so communities, there's Overlander, the app, which I hear is pretty helpful. What else? There's the Pan American Highway Facebook group. That's pretty popular. Maybe you guys are in that one too. What else are you guys doing in terms of like community for asking questions and this and that?
We literally just talk to people.
Yeah. We did this whole Twitter thing. I've had it for like FinTwit since like maybe 2018, just kind of like for financial stuff. Yeah. And then I just started like a month ago going, I should probably just put some of our information on there. And so I started that's how I found you, because I started posting like travel stuff in Latin America, and then you popped up and I'm like, Oh, cool. So I looked at your site. I'm like, oh, you got a lot of good information on here. So
Thanks.
we're going to start putting more stuff on there on X or whatever it is. We're going to put more information on there as while we're traveling.
You guys will
And
do
then,
well. Like like you guys will do well if you stay consistent with it. There's really not that many overlanders. Like they're all on YouTube,
I
I
noticed.
guess. They're on
Yeah.
YouTube, but no one's on Twitter. So
Yeah, well, and now it's Instagram. We always all the people that were like traveling the Pan American were on Instagram because they're doing like the Instagram thing, and a lot of people message each other through that. And then with the Facebook group, they use Messenger, but everybody uses WhatsApp. You know, but for us, when we post like for our content or information, we've been doing the Instagram, but not like trying to get followers like a lot of people do. It's just for us. It's just to capture our moments.
Yeah, pretty much network with them. Try to find resources. So like tomorrow we leave here and we fly out to go back to Ecuador, and we need to get a bunch of work done. We need to store our vehicle because we want to fly to the Galapagos. So we sent messages out to people yesterday. Hey, do you know where I can get this, and this done? And they're like, yes, you can just come to my shop and you can store your vehicle at my house.
Yeah, and that was on Instagram.
So that's more of what we use it for, and to kind of just show our friends and family, this is where we are. Yes, we're safe. Yes, we're enjoying ourselves. Come join us if you want to.
And to show people it's not what they're told in the States. You know, we're fine. Huh?
What were they told?
Well, every time, you know how it is. Every time we come back here, it's like, they're like, oh, where'd you go? We're like, aren't you scared?
Is it safe?
Is it safe? Wait.
What about the drug cartels?
What about the cartels? It's like,
did you ever feel threatened?
Yeah, that's the first 4 questions everybody asks. You know, unless they've traveled, which is very rare, and they'll be like, oh yeah, it's been there, it's nice.
Yeah,
it's very interesting when you go back home and go back to the States as someone living an unconventional life and kind of reappearing in conventional life and dealing with these questions and kind of the epiphanies that you have.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think sometimes it's really hard for us coming back here because people don't understand, and they want to ask the questions, but they don't really want to understand what it's like to live this kind of life and to be essentially nomadic, you know,
100% free.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of jealousy that comes along with that. You know, there's always those people that say, oh, I want to do that, but my wife, or, oh, I would love to do that, but my husband, oh, I would love to do that, but I have kids, you know, and instead of like figuring out, oh, how can we do this? They automatically kind of block themselves off from the idea that it can be done. And, you know, it's really hard to see when people want this dream and it's so achievable, but they don't want to work towards it.
There's people like you that are interested, like, I want to learn about this stuff. There's 2 people. There's the people like that are interested and fascinated, and there's the people that are, like she said, just jealous. Usually it's the people that aren't happy with whatever it is in their life. You know, whatever it is, they get jealous or whatever. I don't know. But the people who are happy, they're all about learning, like we all are.
Yeah, inquisitive. They want to know how they can do it. You know, they take the information, they use that information, and they figure out a way, even if it's only for a few months. When we first started, it was like, well, let's do this for a year and see if it's something that we like. And if not, we still have the house. And then after the first year, we're like, yeah, we're not coming back.
And I really like this idea of how you guys can just leave the car and fly back whenever you want if there's like a wedding or like whatever it is, right?
Family illness, we've done that.
Yeah, we've done that a lot.
So it's not just like we're gone for a year, you know, no contact type of thing. Like you can still always pop back.
Yes.
Well, check this out. When we were in Nicaragua, I was out surfing. I came back and she had her bags packed. I'm like, oh, where are you going? And she goes, my uncle's sick. You know, I think he's dying. We got to go. I'm like, okay. We grabbed the vehicle, went and dropped her off at the border in Costa Rica. She and her kid had their bags packed. We had our dog at the time, so I couldn't go, you know, because we didn't have the time to do all the paperwork for that. So I'm like, all right, dropped her off the border, and her and Caden, our kid, they were there at his bedside before any of the other family
that lives stateside.
that lives there.
Yeah. That live within 3-hour drive of him.
Yeah.
So, and you know, it's easy for us to be able to drop things and go. Like we said, we have a carry-on bag and we just pack that up. It's always loaded.
Let's go.
So you just grab it out of the car, you know, drop your car off at the airport if you need to. You know, there are some logistical challenges of making sure that you get your vehicle stored depending on what country you're in. And that's a whole separate issue of logistics.
Yeah, I have so many questions. I do want to make sure we get. I want to ask about the son.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And doing it as a family.
Yeah.
And you know, when the kid's 10, you know, he kind of has no choice. He's coming along, right?
Right.
Now he's 16.
But now that he's 16, he's kind of like, you know, I would love to be on a football team and go to some high school parties.
He's never wanted that.
He has no interest in any of those things. He has been living this unconventional life now for so long that it doesn't even cross his mind. And I keep telling him, I'm like, you're going to be so bored when you go to college. You're like not even going to know how to have fun and go drinking with your buddies. And like, and he's like, I don't have any desire to do any of that, you know, because for us, we don't really keep anything off limits for him. He's free to make his choices, and we tell him whether we think it's a good choice or a bad choice. And then he has to suffer the consequences of whatever choices he makes. So he's pretty...
What does a bad choice look like on the road for him as a 16-year-old? Is he starting to meet some Latinas and stuff?
He is. Actually, he got picked up on once when we were in a Walmart. By some little, she was probably 15 or 16 and he was 14 at the time.
I think so.
And she came up to me and she asked me if he had a girlfriend. And I was like, no, he doesn't have a girlfriend. So she went up to him and started talking to him and batting her eyes at him. And he was like, no, not interested. But he's outside doing things all the time. So
he's surfing and we scuba dive and we're always constantly doing stuff, you know. We're so busy. When we're on the road, there's not a lot of downtime.
And a bad decision would be something that gets him in trouble or hurts him, you know, things like that. You make your choices, you learn from those choices because we can't teach you that. Those are just hard life lessons that you're going to have to learn.
But he's also always been different. Even when we were skiing every day in Tahoe, his first 10 years, he's always been like, nah, I really don't want to jump off of that. You know, I'm like, cool. That's less medical bills for me. You know, he's always been kind of standoffish on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he hasn't been able to really get himself in trouble yet.
I know he's going to listen to this and I'm kind of embarrassing him, but I got to ask this one. So do you guys sleep all three in the tent on the roof or is he like sleeping below? Or?
It depends. He has his own tent.
Yeah, he has his own tent for when he wants his own separate space. But for the most part, he'll sleep up there with us.
Yeah. The thing is, it's like, if you think about when you're in the United States and he's going to school, she's going to her job, I'm going to my job, we're all going separate ways. We all try and get back to connect with each other.
There's no cohesion.
And there's no cohesion. We're always constantly kind of battling. But when we're all together and we're doing the same route, going the same way on the same purpose, there's just less conflict. You know, he just, like he would say, well, Mom, Dad, I don't understand why these kids don't like their parents.
Or why they want to, why are kids in such a hurry to leave their parents' house?
Yeah. Because they're probably not traveling the world.
American brainwashing.
Right. You know, and a lot of it is like, he's not feeling the peer pressure to go out and smoke weed or do drugs. He's not feeling the peer pressure to go out and drink. I mean, I ask him all the time. I'm like, do you want some of my wine? Do you want some beer? Do you want to try this? And he'll be like, no,
I'm good.
By knowing that he doesn't have things that are off limits to him, it kind of removes that curiosity and that, the mysteriousness, around it. So there really isn't any reason for him to feel like, oh, I should try that because if my parents are never going to let me do this.
Well, and then when he goes back to visit his friends, what he noticed is they're just so unhappy. And he's like, oh,
The
yeah,
other
just
kids.
Yeah.
his old friends from high school, from elementary. They're like, they're just so unhappy. They're not the same. And they're always on their social media. And he doesn't have social media. He said
He
that
doesn't want it.
I don't want it. He's like, I don't want anything to do with social media, because he saw how his friends were so unhappy that he just made the choice not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We said, you can do it if you want it. No, doesn't want it.
Yeah. We actually even tried, because we were considering putting up a TikTok page for Slowverlanders. And I said, well, you would be in charge of that. And he's like, why?
He's like, I don't want nothing to do with it.
I don't want to have anything to do with that. Like, you don't want your own TikTok page? He's like, what good would that do me? He's like, have you seen the videos on TikTok, Mom? They're stupid. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting.
What about like a curfew, or do you have to be back to the van by nightfall or something?
We have zero.
No.
We don't have any.
He sets his own schedule. He wakes up when he wants to wake up. He goes to bed when he wants to go to bed. If we have something that we have to do early in the morning, he knows that he has to be up for it. And he wants to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning, and we have a 6 o'clock flight and we have to be at the airport at 4. That's on him. Yeah. He's got to learn those
what about the
time
SAT?
management skills.
Is he studying for the SAT?
Well, he studies like an online curriculum sometimes.
The amazing thing is in his schooling, the minimum requirement for high school is so small in the United States. There's like 8 classes. There's like 8 main groups.
Core classes.
8 core classes that are required.
Mm-hmm.
And that's literally it. Like some kids will just knock out the school online in like a year and a half instead of the 4 years, because there's so much fluff. It's like it was created as like daycare. You know what I mean? For
right, exactly,
industrial age.
Yeah,
exactly. It's daycare. We ended up pulling him out when we went to Japan for like a month, and we realized quickly that, wow, like we pulled you out of school. You were gone for this month, and you came back, and you were ahead of the class.
And he did all of his schoolwork in 1 week.
Yeah,
they gave him a whole month worth of schoolwork. He did 90% of it on the plane ride there, and then he just took his math and did that over the course of a week. And he was ahead of the class when he got back by doing that 1 week of schoolwork.
And that's when we realized that
it just wasn't.
If we have this opportunity to take him out of school and just travel the world, he's going to learn much more.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I did a podcast last week with a guy in Mexico, and they actually moved back to the States for like the final 2 years of high school, so that the daughter could kind of ramp up for American university or college. That she really, really wanted to go to college in the States, like at her behest. And so they were kind of ramping up for that. And so I'm sure a lot of families, at least when they start the nomad life or the expat life, they think that they want their kid to go to an American college, even if they'll probably change their mind or something later on. But they think that that's like something that needs to happen later. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't want him to go to an American school. I really don't, because I don't want him to feel like he's obligated to pay into this system where the return on investment is so low. He's actually been looking at options to go into Norway and Switzerland for school, where he can pay anywhere from $1,200 a year to $5,000 a year for his undergraduate work.
And on top of that, we noticed, like when we stayed in Nicaragua, when we stopped traveling, like even when we're in a foreign country, but when you stop moving, he stops learning. Like when we're on the road, every day is a whole new adventure and a different town, a different experience, a different little culture. And we're learning it's like every year it feels like a lifetime when we're on the road. But when we stop, and we just, even in like in Nicaragua, in that one town, it just feels like it's a nice break, to slow down and stuff. But then after a while, we're like, we're not really learning as much as we are when we're constantly on the move. And so for him, as long as for this next 2 years, we'd rather keep him on the move and keep learning Spanish and do that stuff than just, have him come back to where my mom lives here in Washington and just go to this high school for 2 years. Because we've been here for like now 2 months, and it's been great volunteering and stuff here, but it's
We're
like
bored.
we're so bored. Like we don't learn as much as we do when we're just
Totally agree.
constantly
When I go
traveling.
back to the States or Canada, it's the most boring week of my year.
Yeah, it's really rough. But our son also, he's dyslexic and he has ADHD. So for him, classroom learning just really doesn't suit him. So being on the road and having this immersion and being able to touch things and smell things and see how things operate in real life and actually build science projects but not really calling it anything. We do all of these things, but we don't do it under the guise of, this is your science class today, this is your biology class, this is your physics class, this is your history class. We don't do that. It's all just incorporated learning is how I can describe it. It's
called
everything all at once.
The term that people have coined is like world schooling.
Yep. Yeah.
And so
and we've actually, while we're in Nicaragua, we helped them start a world schooling school in Nicaragua. And so he is actually playing with the kids there and helping deal with that program.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like he's like they'll put him in charge like at the food bank, and he'll run the produce program at the food bank. Like he's learning so many more things than he would be in school.
Yeah, and he has the opportunity. Like we've helped flood victims replenish their whole entire village, and just trying to navigate through all of the things that we really don't have to worry about here. We get to go to the grocery store in the United States and get everything that we need in one store. And when you're not in America, you have to go to the supermercado, and then you have to go to your verduras, and you have all of these different places where you have to go to get your things, because not everything is located in one spot. And if I wanted to go get ibuprofen, I have to go to a pharmacy. I can't just pick that up in the first aid section.
And that forces him to learn Spanish by dealing with all these people around the town.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think I had a tweet on this the other day that you replied to, where it was like, if you're overlanding in the States, you kind of need the full kitchen because food's not everywhere. But
it's expensive.
But in Latin America, there's like people in the street like selling fruit or pupusas, whatever country, like selling street food wherever you are, right? So maybe you don't even need the kitchen, or you need a reduced. You only need a reduced down kitchen on the road in Latin America.
Yeah, and even if you're going off grid for a while, you can just have the basic, like dry goods and stuff when you're going out, like you're camping, until you get back to civilization again. And
I would say the only caveat to that is if you are on a special diet, like if you're a vegan, you can't eat street food. There's nothing vegan about that street food. They're using lard to make their tortillas. You've got lard in your rice and beans. So if you're vegan, you're not eating street food. But if you don't have a restrictive diet, you can get it anywhere.
Yeah,
so
and also
you don't really need.
What you see in the United States, you see these crazy overland buildups with these like Forerunners and everything, and they're like our vehicle. In the States, it's unnecessary. You just get a truck and a camper, or a truck and a trailer. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Different. It's just different.
Yeah, and it's really got to be tailored to what it is that you plan on doing. And my advice to everybody out there is take a year and travel and see how you travel, because until you're doing it, you don't know how you're going to do it.
We always backpacked, but when we went full time, we have a dog. We had a dog at the time, so we couldn't just go backpacking with our dog and our kid.
There's tons of logistics around getting a health certificate for your dog to leave the States and then leave every single country. And then
you have to have a car.
Yeah. And where are you going to keep them? And
I've had some viral tweets that were like, the most freedom limiting thing you can do is have a dog.
It is.
Well, we go to those Airbnbs. It's like you're like, okay, cool. Let's stay in Medellin. And it's like, okay, cool. There's like 3,000 places, dog friendly. Oh, cool. There's 20.
Yeah. It's very limiting for sure. And then trying to get them on a plane if you need to fly back for any reason. And
every country you go into, you requires a separate import for your animal or vehicle and you, essentially.
And a monetary fee for the agriculture inspection and
Yep.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask about this at the beginning and never got to it, but maybe I'll squeak it in now. So if you have a different size of vehicle, is it a different temp import permit? Like if you have a big Sprinter compared to an SUV, is it a different permit?
Only if it's dual rear wheel Sprinter. Your bigger vehicles will have a higher fee when it comes to either shipping and even
Well,
Okay, but if it's four
it
wheels, it's all the
depends.
same usually?
It depends, because if it's considered an RV, like in Mexico, if it's considered an RV, you pay the same fee, well, essentially the same fee as a car, but you get a 10-year import permit for an RV
Instead of 1
instead
year.
of 6 months for your car.
Yeah.
So weird.
It's
Yeah.
all, each country is
So-
different. Like they can charge. I've seen them charge more for RVs. Like some countries, as you know, you'll go through like the toll booth and it'll say like, motorcycle, small car, larger car, truck,
Heavy vehicle.
heavy vehicle.
And it's a different toll.
And it's a different toll.
And the heavier vehicle is, and the bigger vehicle is, more money you're paying. Both
Yeah.
fuel, tires, mechanic, everything is just more expensive. The
We
bigger
paid
you go.
so much money in tolls when we had the ambulance in Mexico. It was probably
Mexican tolls are a lot.
Oh yeah,
It'd be like $20 for one toll for a car.
Exactly.
And like every 20 minutes.
I think we paid in 6 months about $2,000 in tolls for that
Holy
vehicle,
shit.
because it was like, oh, it's $8 in this toll booth, it's $4 in this toll booth. We never got charged anything less than like $3.50 to go through the tolls. And I'm like, Jesus, this is so expensive, because we had dual rear tires, so it was automatically a heavy vehicle.
Hey everybody. Quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co-founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America. And Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information.
Well, one other weird question I'm going to sneak in. So let's just say someone does have to work and they have kids. You know what I mean? What suggestions would you have in terms of being able to, say, take a call like this or record a podcast while on the road, while you have a kid? Obviously, it kind of depends on maybe the age of the kids, but would you be like, hey, mommy, can you like take the kid for a walk or something because I have an hour call? But even still, it's like hard to, I don't know, or like what suggestions would you have for like the working man on the road?
Well, first get Starlink or something like that. Because
internet access can be a real bitch.
Our internet access in Nicaragua at the house we rented was 1 megabyte per second. One.
Mm-hmm.
So like you can't stream anything. I'd say that, and then there are workspaces in certain places. But if you're really tied to doing something like this every day, you're not going to be able to go to a lot of places that we go in these villages because there's no access.
But I would say that, if you have a spouse that can take your kids, or a significant other that can take the kids, and let them, just say, hey, can you take them for a walk for an hour, take them to the park for an hour, or whatever. Or another option is, Latin American families are so close knit, and they really keep an eye on the people that are around them. And I cannot tell you how many times people have just walked up to me and said, "Can you watch my baby?" and just handed me the baby.
Yeah.
They trust the white lady.
They're just so trusting, and we as Americans were just so standoffish. We could never imagine just leaving our kids with a stranger anymore.
Well, one thing that would be helpful is if you're like have a time like this, you set a time. We were getting Spanish lessons at our house, like for an hour, it was like $7. So you can even have your kid in Spanish lessons if they're old enough. If not, you can get daycare and stuff down there.
And it's so cheap.
Yeah, daycare.
It's not $1,000 a month like it is in the States.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is something I'd probably do as well is, a lot of these van lifers like live in the van and maybe
Oh
because
yeah,
they need to or whatever, but I don't see why you wouldn't just rent like an Airbnb for $200 a week or something and then hit
Exactly.
the
well
road
here's
and
the
kind of
part.
do like a blend.
Yes.
Well, here's the problem is they're always in a time limit. So they have to go. The actual, and this is a very important part, is when you do a short-term rental between 7 and 10 days, let's say it's $700 for 7 to 10 days. If you do a month, it's the same.
Yeah.
So for us, it's better to go and camp. Oh, this place has a lot of stuff. Let's rent a house for 3 months, and you're paying like $500 a month for a place, and then you're just going back and forth. And sometimes we'll even rent two places if we have to because it's so cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll be here like, oh, we'll go to some other place and go, oh man, let's go check this region out, and end up getting a second place. We're still renting the other one because it's just so much cheaper. If you ever do like a week. If we ever think we're going to do a week, we just get a full month because even if we don't do the full month, we can walk away after 2 weeks. We still save money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
We started out doing essentially van life, living out of our vehicle full time, but as much as it kept breaking down, and then as cheap as it got while we were in Mexico and we were being able to rent these places and save money, essentially, I was like, well, does it make sense for us to just keep staying in the vehicle, or can we do like a hybrid thing where we camp, then we rent Airbnbs, we hostel, so we do all of it.
But see, that works great for Latin America. But when we hit Africa, we may not have those same options. So that's going to be better to get a more full-time rig.
Yeah.
1 month Airbnb in the Serengeti.
Or another thing that we do real quick is when we go to places, there's places you can't access by car, obviously, in Colombia, a lot of them. So what we do is we go to Bogota, park our vehicle, and we'll fly the Amazon for a week or two. Fly back. Round trip tickets like $65.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go explore the Amazon, come back. We flew over to Chaco, Pacific, where you have to fly to an airstrip and then take boats to different villages because there's no roads on the Pacific, which is amazing.
It's wild to think about.
Yeah.
Damn, you guys are hitting it hard.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny because we don't know how much information we know until people start asking us questions.
Yeah. And the shame of this podcast episode is I didn't really get to like get in detail about some of the adventures you've had and how thoroughly you're exploring some of these regions. Like we haven't even talked all that much about Latin America in and of itself, but this has been just like a good primer, and it just helps make things so much more relatable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what we want to do. We want to make it accessible to people. Our whole idea is to share ideas, share stories, and inspire people to do something that maybe I'm not so comfortable doing that, but I guess I'll give it a try.
Well, it's really tough when we're watching these people over here at the food bank for 2 months, old people just struggling, living in their cars. And we know that all they have to do is go south, and we see people down there they're renting a house for $300. They're only making $900 a month. That's all the income they have. They're starving to death here. They go down there, they have fresh food. They've got a place by the beach. You see these guys come down there like from Texas, and they come down there after the first month. They're sitting there, they got a girl in their arm, and they're drinking a beer. Like, that was quick.
You mean like if they were to just live off Social Security from
they would starve to death. Yeah.
Yeah. In Latin America, they can do it.
Here
they can't.
Not even since the prices rose, they're struggling right now. There's a lot of homeless. Elderly are getting homeless at a crazy pace right now.
I believe it.
It's really sad to watch.
But there's opportunity out there, but it's hard. They don't know it's there.
It's so funny that you guys say you're retired, but you're like late 40s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Killing it. I mean, so interesting. I mean, I think we'll have to have you guys on, or I want to do like maybe like an overlanding roundtable and get like a bunch of different overlanders or something.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what was I gonna say? yeah, you guys would kill it if you guys did YouTube or
We
did the
just
social
started
media. 'Cause
YouTube 9 months
you
ago.
guys are so like relatable and normal and stuff, you know?
We just started YouTube 9 months ago. We should have started 5 years ago because we're just learning now. But we do have the YouTube channel under the same name that we
Cool.
just started. But with the Instagram, if you want to see like our older experiences from the beginning, we only put stuff on there, like our favorite places on there, in like basically a 10 picture album with description. And we haven't been using it to like I said, make money and like grow an audience. We've done it just to kind of catalog our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to see anything about Mexico, those places, if you just scroll down our feed or whatever, you'll see like Rutas de Tolantongo and all those more random places that people don't usually get to go to in Mexico.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'm sure you guys have some crazy stories about
it's
villages and
every day.
stuff.
Yeah. But you know, I think one of our best experiences is ending up in this tiny little remote village going to see this healer up in the Andes, just literally at the top of the mountain overlooking all of the Andes Mountains as we're watching a volcano erupt in the distance. And that was all because of a selfish want of, I just wanted to go sit in this little Jeep Willys and pretend like I was driving it because it was a coffee cart. Mm-hmm. And we ended up in a totally different random village talking to this shaman and cooking from the land, and just an incredibly amazing experience.
We have experiences you cannot plan.
Yeah.
There's no way to plan it. We just leave ourselves open to whatever comes our way, and
yeah, I think it's that, you know, stop saying no and just say yes. And most of the times we just say, okay, sure, why not? And we have these incredible and amazing experiences that we wouldn't have otherwise. And we're just so programmed here in the United States to always say no.
And plan. Everything's got to be structured.
And by leaving ourselves open and saying, yes, let's do that. Unless it's something that raises the hair on the back of my neck, I'm like, yes, I'm all in. And people can't seem to let go of their inhibitions enough to get out there and do that. And that's a big part of being in this lifestyle.
You just take it as it comes, live day to day.
Mm-hmm. Opening yourself to the world and the people in it.
Yep.
Which is not easy for me, especially being a cop and really untrusting of people by nature. So that has been really a difficult thing for me to overcome. So I know that that's a big issue here for us in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, the cop mindset in Latin America must be an interesting one, where you're like, that would be illegal. That would be illegal.
Oh, all the time.
All the time. I'm like, I cannot believe this shit they get away with down here.
Well, and also people in the United States, they think, oh my, do you guys deal with the crooked police? And I'm like, well, usually we hope they are.
All the time.
Because, like, say for instance, in Nicaragua, you're driving your car and you cross the line, you know, and you get stopped by a cop, and he'll be like, you know, let me see your license, and then he'll take your license, he'll send it back to Managua, right, for 8 days, and you have to go back and do all the bureaucratic stuff to get your license back and everything to get your vehicle.
And it's a scavenger hunt to try to find the building where you have to go retrieve your license.
Yeah, so a normal cop would do that, but if they're crooked, you ask, do we pay here? And you look around, they're like, yeah, you can pay here. It's the same price.
But now we don't have to.
But now I don't have to go to Managua.
Hay otra manera de arreglar eso.
¿Puedo pagar acá? Yeah. And you know, and 9 times out of 10, that works for us. You know, only one time did we actually get the license taken and have to do the scavenger hunt, but that was awful.
I didn't know that was a thing, so that's good to know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got our motorbike confiscated in Mexico. Yeah.
Oh, we have hundreds.
We have so many
Yeah.
stories.
So do you have like a rack on the back of the Toyota with a motorcycle on it?
No, so
No,
what we did,
when we had the
When you had the
ambulance.
ambulance.
when the
Okay.
ambulance, we put a rack for the motorcycle. When we got to Nicaragua, after the second year, we go, you know what? We're going to be here another year. I'm buying a motorcycle. So I went and bought a Chinese, 220, a 200cc. It was like brand new, had 4,000 kilometers on it. Bought it for like $1,200. Put a surf rack on it. Went surfing every day with that. Put the miles on that every day for a year. Then sold it for $1,200, and we moved on.
Yeah.
As we go, well, if we're going to be in a spot for like 4 months, I'll buy a surfboard and then sell it instead of renting things.
Yeah, definitely.
Otherwise, we just rent all of our gear, rent our bikes, rent our motorcycles, all that.
Yeah. So we don't have to
Nothing to
carry a bunch of
maintain.
those things
We
with
have
us.
the only thing we maintain is our vehicle. Our houses. We just sold 2 houses. We sold everything we had and just put that in investments, and just live on half of our salary by just traveling the world.
Probably worth mentioning before we wrap up, like what budget would you recommend to people, that kind of thing?
It depends on your. It's all about
How are you traveling?
your conveniences, because we have one couple that always tracks every bit of their expenses, and they're driving a truck and camper doing what we're doing, and they're going slow like we are, and they don't rent as many houses as we do, and they spend about $1,000 a month in their of complete and total bills
All in.
on the road,
All in.
all in. Food, fuel,
fuel.
repairs, everything, average. Because sometimes it's $800 a month, sometimes it's $1,200 a month.
Sometimes it's $600 a month.
Yeah.
So
But for us, we'll probably spend about $2,000 or $3,000 a month, because we're going scuba diving, we're going paragliding, we're
flying to remote regions, taking tours.
we'll
all
take
over
tours
the
in the
place.
Amazon. We're pretty.
That includes
busy.
our fuel. our
What does
food.
life cost in Lake Tahoe these days? $10K a
Oh
month
my gosh,
minimum?
at least.
So
at least.
basically,
Yeah.
3 months. When we come here, 3 months, we'll stay at my mom's place. Right, we'll stay with them because we're helping them, and they're getting older in age. We need to try and help around the house and get them set for when we leave again. And we'll spend more just being at that house here in the United States, just on food and everything, than we spend
The whole year.
in the whole other 9 months out of the year. So 3 months in the U.S. is costing the same as 9 months outside the country, and that's not including any kind of rent in the U.S.
It's insane.
So that's how much of a change is. I kind of compare it to, like, if you leave the country and let's say you have a passive income. If you leave the U.S. and go down there, you're essentially quadrupling your salary.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like.
For sure. For sure.
That's
For
it.
anyone on like a fixed pension or something, it's like a
Oh yeah,
no-brainer.
and people are like, "Are you guys millionaire?" They think it costs you $1 million a year to travel, because when they go on vacation, they go to Disney and spend eight grand for 2 people, at like a Disney hotel, whereas we'll spend $3,000 a month for scuba diving and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I would
Staying
say
in
that
Airbnbs.
if you have $24,000 for the whole year, you are
You're set.
golden.
I'm sure a lot of people are saying, sign me up.
Yeah. I mean, you can find things. If you are willing to give up some of your conveniences, you can live very well, and you can make this a lifestyle. I know 20-somethings that had started this same type of trip, given up their day job, and decided that they were going to do yoga teacher training, and that's how they make their living on the road.
Yep.
So they go and they teach at yoga retreats, and then they just keep traveling.
At the same time, if you do like luxury, you can spend $8,000 a month and get the same life you'd have here at $24,000 a month.
I don't see how you could spend $8K a month. On that.
I don't either.
I don't either.
You'd have to be like in the like the top thing in like one of the major cities.
Yeah, you got to be in a penthouse or
in a
something.
penthouse suite with. I just don't know either.
I don't.
The
I
food,
don't
the
One
know.
random
cost.
selfish question that's like very out of the flow, but so let's just say you don't want to buy your next vehicle in the US, you'd maybe buy it in Nicaragua or something like that. What license plate do you put on it? And do you think that would have any impact on your ability to get the temporary import permits and so forth? Because there's probably not a lot of Nicaraguan vehicles getting import permits in Ecuador and stuff like that.
It just goes by the vehicle and the person, essentially.
Yeah. So we actually registered our vehicle in Nicaragua. The problem with registering your vehicle outside of the United States is leaving the country that it's registered in. So
that's permanent registration, though.
Yeah, if you're registering
temporary,
right?
If you're
But let's just say
registering
you
your
buy it.
vehicle,
Like if I live in Mexico, I could buy the car in Mexico, or maybe I could buy the car in the States, and then
Right.
I could travel Latin America
Mhm.
on with the car. I kind of have the choice. Do I want to travel Latin America on a Mexican car or on an American car? Does it make a difference?
It makes no difference.
It goes to the title of the vehicle, not the registration.
The title and the owner of the vehicle.
So if your name is on the title of the vehicle, doesn't matter what country it's in, they just want to see that you own it, you didn't steal it.
Right.
They don't. That's basically
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
They don't care where the vehicle is registered originally. It doesn't really matter. It's not like they're gonna blackball you from coming in just because you're from Nicaragua.
We did that in Costa Rica. We went in with our Nicaragua plates. We came back out and then we changed our plates to American plates. And they're like, wait, we're showing this is a Nicaraguan vehicle. We're like, oh no, we're changing plates because we're going to go back to the United States.
Sending it back to the
States.
Like,
oh, okay, that's fine. And they just wrote it in and just changed the permit. It's pretty simple. It's just they just want their money. You know, they just want the money they're going to get for that permit.
I do say if you have two different sets of license plates from two different countries, when you enter the country and you leave the country, make sure that the plate is the same from coming in to exiting. And then before you get into the next border, you can change over your plates. Because
here's the thing. When you go, did you drive through all the borders before? Have you driven through borders?
Not really, just U.S., Canada.
So when you go through borders with a vehicle, you have to you check out of a country, and then you're like basically international waters.
You're like in no
man's land. So what we did, you have check out, and then you go to check in. When you go to import the next country, you're starting fresh. They just want the information of the vehicle to import it into that country. So actually, one of the loops that loop around our way around getting out of our temporary permit this time is we were leaving Colombia. And then we got the stamp out, and as we left Colombia, we just took a left, went back into the country, and then parked it at storage. So it's not any country right now. So then when we go back, you can leave it there for like a year, 2 years. It's just in storage and secured parking. Mm-hmm. So then we come back, we pay whatever it's owed, usually super cheap, and then we skip leaving the country with the vehicle on the Colombia side. We just go straight into Ecuador.
Right, and almost choose which one you want to enter. It could be Colombia or Ecuador.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Because we're not registered anywhere yet.
Waters.
Yeah.
That's a really good tip. Mm-hmm. Well, you guys have been super generous with your time and the questions, and this has been a really interesting episode. I mean, it's just so cool that two very salt of the earth Americans, a cop and a firefighter, have taken this unconventional path, and no one really knows about you guys yet. You know, we
haven't been trying to get followers. We're just living our lives, and we share with people who want to see it, but we're not actively trying to build anything.
Yeah.
Amazing. So Africa next at some point, and then what's next after that? You guys going to buy a boat and sail the world?
The whole world. We've already.
We'll see.
While we've been traveling, we've already met so many people that have been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
Once you start, it's very hard to give up.
Yeah. There's just so much to see out there, and there's so much that spikes my curiosity, and there's all these mountains that I want to climb. So I got to do a bunch of this stuff while I'm still young, before all of my body breaks down.
Well, let's definitely keep checking in. I feel like we could do 10 hours of podcasting. It'll still be interesting. So let's definitely keep checking in.
All right.
But thank you guys again so much for your time, and take this time, by the way, for the audience to tell them again where they can find you.
We have a blog at slowverlanders.com. We are also on YouTube at Slowverlanders, SLOWVERLANDERS. We're on Instagram at Slowverlanders as well.
Same as X.
And X. I don't know, because I don't do any of the social media, so he does all of that.
Awesome. Well, this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guests today, Bronson and Vanessa from Slowverlanders. Thank you so much to Bronson and Vanessa, and thank you to the audience for listening.
Thank you.
Take care.